My girlfriend is pregnant, so I'm divorcing you. I want you to freak out of here. Now!
My husband said, and then he takes the hand of a woman I didn't recognize and thrusts divorce documents in my face. It's a very desperate situation, and under normal circumstances, I'd be distraught. But I was actually struggling to hold back my laughter. That's how ridiculous the situation was right now from my point of view. The reason was because he was going to hell, and I knew he was, so as a subtle hint, I said, "Don't come crying to my front door if you regret your decision, eh?" This is the story of how my husband's extremely hardcore spending habits and his condescension towards how I wanted to manage my own money eventually made our married life together pretty miserable, and how taking matters into my own hands got him the brutal backlash he deserved. My name is Gail, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. My husband, Sonny, is a 35-year-old businessman. He used to work for Dad's company, by which I mean he worked for the company of which my dad was president. And in the beginning, he had a good professional reputation. Talk of such a man traveled rather quickly throughout the whole company, and the rumor eventually found its way to Dad's ears, and he was interested in matching me up with him as his daughter. At first, I was only willing to participate in the match because I knew Dad was worried about my future, as in there was concern that I would never marry and have children. I wanted Dad not to be worried about me, so I thought accepting his request to go along with the matchmaking was the best thing I could do. And, to my great surprise, I found myself interested in Sonny because he was sincere, earnest, good at getting around, and good at talking. He made a great impression on me even at our first meeting, and I saw a future with him. The reason why Dad was worried about me was because I was inherently not very sociable. But I wasn't always this way. A long time ago, I used to be a very talkative, oftentimes flirtatious woman, but that caused many a man to come clinging to me for simple reason that I was the daughter of a company president. My character changed over time because it was a way to sift out the men who came drooling to my father's money, and before I knew it, I had developed a strong sense of will and it just became a true part of me. Some good terms to describe me was cynical and critical of men. A ruder way to describe me was sassy and unattractive. That's precisely why I couldn't be very sociable on dates in general, and why Dad figured he should take action and find me a good man. And Sonny was different because I didn't feel like he was forcing himself on me. He told me after a few outings together,
I like you for who you are, Miss Gale.
That enabled me to let my guard down a little bit and be more open to him as a man whom I could maybe marry in the future. I wasn't good at letting myself be pampered by other people, but I thought I ought to make an effort for Sonny and began to show him more of my softer side. He understood I needed time to adjust, and thankfully everything went smoothly. Not just in my relationship with him, though. Because I had always tried to do everything myself, I couldn't ask for anyone for help, as it would go against my pride. But now that I could ask Sonny for help sometimes, I was able to gradually reevaluate my communication skills not only with him, but also with other people. Dad, who was very pleased with the change in his daughter, trusted Sonny and was very happy when we told him we started formally dating a few months after our first blind date.
Sonny, my boy, I can trust you with my daughter. Take care of her, my man.
Yes, sir. I promise to make Miss Gale happy.
He assured Dad, and also me, of this at our official meeting with my parents as boyfriend and girlfriend, which made me very happy and hopeful for the future. We got married after nearly 2 years of dating, and 3 years had passed then. However, after 3 long years, you begin to get to know a lot of hidden things about the person you decided to be with for the rest of your life. For better or for worse, it can alter a relationship, and in my case, it was unfortunately for the worse. During these 3 years, I had come to realize that Sonny was obsessed with money to an unusual degree. I didn't want to deny my husband's values in general because the value of money is cultivated over the course of an individual person's life, but even so, I sometimes find his obsession with money to be very strange and, as we'll see, quite literally, dangerous. I was a full-time housewife, and Dad gave me an allowance of about $1,000 a month. This was his way of making me feel less lonely because Sonny was soon to be promoted to department manager, and his hours of working at the company would undoubtedly become longer. At first, I thought about refusing Dad's offer, but I knew he had a stubborn side to him. one that didn't accept any refusal once an offer of his was made. So I eventually gave in to his wishes and started to receive an allowance from him. But I put the money in a savings account and did my best not to let it slip through my fingers. I saved as much as I could with the intention that I was going to return it to him as a retirement fund because he wouldn't accept it even if I gave it back to him now. But as soon as Sonny found out about how I was receiving money from him and that I was saving it, he started yelling at me in a terrible manner.
Why the hell aren't you using it? What are you thinking, Gail? I can't believe you hid the money from me.
He was so angry, and he repeatedly insisted that it was a waste not to use the money. What was more, he didn't want me to spend it on living expenses, but instead on entertainment and fun. It was hard to spend all of it on fun and entertainment because it was such a reasonable amount of money. So I suggested that we use some of it to go on a trip somewhere. Sonny was the breadwinner between the two of us, and I felt bad for not telling him about the money. I had no hesitation in using the money if it meant we could make some time for us as a married couple. However, he was more willing to spend all the savings. He made travel plans that included doing whatever he wanted. In my eyes, this was a ridiculous plan, and I was strongly against it. So I told him, Sonny, I want to return at least a decent amount of this money to Dad in the future, so even if you do spend it, please don't spend it all. I thought I was being reasonable, and considering the kind of guy he was, I thought he would understand. Boy, was I wrong.
You're living on my damn money, and that makes all your money mine.
He started claiming, and this led to a lot of arguments, and finally...
I can't trust you with my money anymore. I'm going to change the bank account that's in your name to my name.
This was downright outrageous, and it took me a long time to persuade him not to do that. In the end, we agreed that I would give him half of the money Dad sent me, and I would give $500 a month.
That's more like it, Gail. And I'll be generous and put this money into a savings account for the family's future. We are hoping to have kids in the future, right? We'll need all the money we can get in the event you get pregnant.
He said, and he kept his word. He put most of the money he got from me into a new savings account that was in his name. But, like I said, he was obsessed with money, and that meant that he spent it pretty carelessly, too. I really had no idea what he spent so much on, but he was never able to save a large amount of money successfully. It was true that he saved quite a bit for the first few months since I started giving him $500, but gradually he put less and less money in the savings account. On the contrary, by the time 6 months had passed, he had spent all the money he had originally saved in his own savings account. And there was less money in the account we used to pay for living expenses like water, gas, and electricity. It was obvious that Sonny was spending way too much money on something. Hey, there's money missing from the bank book. You're spending money, aren't you? I questioned him about it, but to no avail.
What I do with the money I make is none of your damn business. Don't talk big as someone who doesn't make even a single penny on her own.
He yelled and kept on saying bullshit that seemed to prove his case. This irritated me so much that I impulsively retorted, If you're so against me not making anything for myself, maybe I'll go work too then. Then you won't complain, won't you?
You can't even do your housework well. What the hell are you even on about? That's why you're so naive. You're a disgrace to the company. Shame on you.
He scoffed, and the harsh words knew no bounds. But I was able to endure his harsh attitude. The reason was because this attitude of his started right after my husband was promoted to a managerial position. More specifically, as I previously mentioned, he became department manager. Therefore, he had far more things to do than before, and he came home far later than he did up until then. He kept himself busy every day, and it's thanks to him that I'm able to survive without contributing to a workforce. In the same manner, it was thanks to Dad being the breadwinner and center of the family that Mom was such a good housewife that took great care of the house and children. Because I grew up in such a home, I had a mentality that was different, and I convinced myself that Sonny was just tired and ill-tempered for the time being. Once things settle down, he'll be back to normal. I told myself that it must have been stress that made him shop more and spend more. That was literally all I could do to be okay with the situation. But then Sonny's arrogance escalated. He sold all the books and other things he didn't need and turned them into money, and the number of things in his room became pathetically small. His room had essentially become a space that was perfect for solitary confinement. Sonny was clearly acting very strangely, selling things in the house to get more money, and trying to cut food expenses by buying cheap bread and ordering me harshly to save money. He even tried to cut down our living expenses, which put me in a very difficult situation. Finally, he started selling my jewelry without my permission, and that was when enough was enough. I was furious. You've become a department manager, and your salary has gone up by a lot, and yet our living expenses are being cut, and you're constantly in need of money. Why?
Shut up. I'm struggling so hard, Gail, and you're making things so difficult. Contribute at least a little to the family budget, eh?
He got furious himself in response, but I refused to listen to him this time. By the end, not only was my father's allowance of $500 a month disappearing in an instant, but so was most of the money in our savings account. I was convinced that there was something wrong with Sonny, and after an agonizing hesitation, I used the accumulated allowance from Dad to hire a detective agency. I hired them because I initially thought that he must have been addicted to gambling, which was why the money was disappearing so mysteriously. Even if he wasn't gambling, it was obvious that something wasn't right. With how abnormally he was behaving, I was sure that the agency would reveal some kind of evidence, and sure enough, it did. And it was unlike anything I ever expected. The agency reported that my husband was seeing another woman. In other words, he was having an affair. I was absolutely stunned by this shocking revelation. Sonny was dating a woman who claimed to be the daughter of a wealthy family of successful investors, and he was buying expensive gifts to impress her. I was flabbergasted when I saw the evidence by the detective agency came pouring in. I was even more shocked to find out that my own husband was trying to impress a woman as he forced his own wife to save money. As soon as I realized this, I almost lost myself, more in anger than in sadness. My life with my husband was that difficult, and I was sick and tired of him and his stupid bullshit. The fact that he didn't see me as family anymore didn't frickin' matter at this point, but the fact did remain. My husband was neglecting our life together because he wanted to be supported by a rich woman, and in the process, verbally abused me so much every day. That angered me to no end. I was never going to forgive my husband or his adulterous bitch, and I was definitely going to take revenge on both of them. I hired the agency again and requested as much evidence as possible of my husband's infidelity and a background check on his adulteress before going back home. I unfortunately had to hold out a little longer until everything was ready to put him through hell. But the good news is that we've been talking less and less as a couple around then, and all he did when he opened his mouth was talk about money. So we spent a week in a frigid home without ever talking to each other, while I found a lawyer, packed up my stuff in secret, explained the situation to my parents, and made other preparations. I told my parents the bare minimum of details for now, that at the very least he had been unfaithful to me. They were very angry, but the reason why I only told them the bare minimum was because I wanted to take my own revenge into my own hands. So I had them promise to wait and be patient until I asked them to make the move.
Don't worry about the money. Do what you must, darling. Consider it my way of atoning for introducing you to a man who wound up doing terrible things to you.
Dad thankfully covered the cost of the credit agency. To be quite honest with you, his financial support was a great help to me, because I had run out of the accumulated allowance from Dad that I had fought through tears and blood to keep from my husband. A week later, I got a call from the agency telling me that the investigation was over. So I went to the agency to have the evidence explained to me, and then went to City Hall to get the divorce documents. As I was waiting for my husband to come home, he actually came through the front door with his lover.
My girlfriend is pregnant, so I'm divorcing you. I want you to freak out of here, now,
he said as he threw the divorce documents in my face. I'll be completely frank, I literally almost burst out laughing at the uncanny timing of his claim to divorce me, which by that point was not surprising in the slightest thanks to the evidence I had received from the agency. You have no idea how hard it was for me to hold back my laughter. And it was even harder to pretend to be calm and composed in front of my treasonous husband because it was so frickin' funny. Sonny was about to receive a miserable and painful retribution in due time, and in this moment he was looking down at me with a cruel, condescending smirk on his face. But if I laughed, it would ruin my plans for revenge right then and there. I took a deep breath and exhaled. Don't come crying to my front door if you regret your decision, eh?
Hey, looky what we have here. A sore loser. Oh, this is so precious.
I ignored him, signed the divorce papers, packed up the remainder of my stuff, and left. Sonny seemed to think he's going to get needed with his sudden and unexpected declaration of divorce. And he must have been so happy that I was leaving so easily. He was that overjoyed that he actually started making out with the adulteress even before I left the room. I'll take all my stuff from the house, he retorted.
I don't need any of your fricking stuff.
I told him that I would ask the movers to come and pick up my stuff later, and I went back to my parents' house with a few suitcases full of clothes, accessories, documents, and other important personal belongings. Once I got settled in at my parents', I showed them all the evidence of his affair that I had gotten that day, and Dad became furious once again.
If you hadn't told me about the affair, I would have marched right up to his pathetic, stupid face and beaten him up. Also, we can't have a person who is such a huge disgrace to our family, an unfaithful, adulterous bastard, and an important position in our company,
he said, and immediately began the arrangements for Sonny's demotion. But this was not motivated solely by his personal grudge against him. In professional matters, the boss of a subordinate needs a rational reason to arrange the demotion of said subordinate. In other words, Dad couldn't use the newfound resentment he had for Sonny as solid grounds for demotion, as stupidly unreasonable as that sounds. And the fact that he was president was irrelevant. The board of stockholders were in charge of that. Indeed, more than half of Dad's actions later was because of his resentment, but luckily, there was another reason to justify Sonny's demotion, and this reason was strictly professional. Actually, Sonny's reputation within the company was in rapid decline due to his frequent negligence and mistakes. Ostensibly, Dad demoted him for that reason. Sonny was high on the idea that a rich, wealthy woman would provide for him, so he treated this veritable Armageddon to his career as a mere temporary setback.
Who would want to work for a company like this anyway? Huh. I only went along with frickin' Gail because she is the boss's daughter, and I don't want a brusque, brash hog of a woman like that in my life.
He spat and quit his job entirely. But a week later, that same demented Sonny with delusions of grandeur came crying to my parents' front door. He was ringing the intercom all morning.
I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I was so wrong,
he sobbed as he got down on his knees. When I opened the door and saw him in such a state, I said, "Remember what I told you? Don't come crying to my front door if you regret your decision." Well, looks like you're doing exactly what I told you not to do. Now, finally, the tables were turning, and I was going to tell the bastard the entire story right there, right then. Sonny didn't know, but the background check I had the detective agency do revealed that it was a complete lie. The adulteress was the daughter of a wealthy family. The adulteress, whose name was one Miss Amanda Charleston, much like Mr. Sonny Locke, was obsessed with money, and had heard from somewhere that he was working in a managerial position, so she made a pass at him. In other words, Sonny was desperately trying to show the woman that he was so rich that she and her family would be impressed and support him. And yet, as of then, the same man, now without a job, and has almost no savings because of the bitch. Furthermore, my lawyer is now finishing up the legal procedures to demand alimony, the division of property, and the money obtained from selling my own personal belongings without my permission. And the adulteress seemed to have given up on a man jobless, penniless, and with mountains of debt, and left him, saying that she is not interested in such a miserable creature. It gets worse. All the furniture and sofas in the house had been given to me by my father as a wedding present, included with the house. I had taken most of the furniture to my parents' mansion, as I had told them I would when I divorced him. And as a result, while the house Dad bought us was still there, it was almost empty. He had no money, and the house was in no condition to live in. Perhaps Sonny came to this realization all by himself, which was why he scampered to my parents' house, but I was not so naive anymore. I'm not so easy to deal with. I mean, after all, I am a brusque, brash woman, right? Good for you. From now on, you can be rid of this monstrosity of a woman you see before you. Be single and use the money you've made yourself just for you. Oh, wait. Did you not have a job anymore? That was insensitive of me. But am I gonna apologize? Sorry, buddy. Sorry that I'm not gonna frickin' feel bad for you after all the pain and harm you caused. Tough. Dad told his company's business partners about you and the affair, so I doubt anyone in this domain of work is going to hire you anymore.
This is absolute defamation! I'll sue you and your family!
Go ahead. But if I were you, I'd reconsider. Just imagine the shame and embarrassment when you lose because of your lack of resources to find and hire a good lawyer. Plus, he merely told his business partners that his daughter was abandoned by her ex-husband and that he was hoping to find someone with whom to match her up. And mind you, he didn't actually say anything wrong. You deserved everything you got, Sonny. And plead and beg all you want. We're not going to forgive you and the bullshit you did. Oh, and another thing. I'm still Dad's daughter. And while I didn't have a formal employment contract, I sometimes helped him out with his business and worked as his secretary at home sometimes. It's given me some connections, so I don't have to worry about finding a job. I should thank you, Mr. Locke. You've set me free. I called the police to remove him from the house, and the last sight I saw of Sonny Locke was of him being dragged away by 2 officers shouting,
Don't abandon me! What am I gonna do now?
He was screaming, and his face was messed up with tears and snot, but I told him, that's all up to you. How could he be so shamelessly subservient to me when he had looked down on me with such great arrogance once upon a time? I watched and smirked as the poor man with no pride, no nothing, was put in a police car and driven away. After that, he was given a stern warning because it was his first offense, and all contact with him was severed. However, after a while, when he stopped paying his alimony and other bills, I asked my lawyer to foreclose on the house, and he was literally left broke and bankrupt. The man who had been so obsessed with money had lost everything, and now he has to work a day job to make ends meet. I heard that he reached out to his own parents, but he owed money to his parents as well, and they are almost completely cut off from him now because of this incident. But they were so generous as to drive 3 hours to my parents' house and apologize to me. We're so sorry for the trouble that boy has caused you, my dear Gale.
We know that if we talk to him, we'll eventually feel obliged to help him. And that will be nothing short spoiling him. We will no longer have anything to do with him.
That's how we, as parents, will take responsibility for his actions. The sweet Mr. and Mrs. Locke seemed to be on the same page, and they both bowed deeply and even offered me money for compensation, which I politely declined. As for me, it's not that I don't want to get along with my in-laws, even if I divorced their son. But that doesn't mean I wanted to talk about money anymore. I was so sick of the word itself, let alone details. I would rather my ex-husband suffer and be lonely in this world with no one to rely on. Now that the bastard's living alone, abandoned by everyone, I can't help but say good riddance. My parents have told me that I didn't have to remarry if I didn't want to, and they suggested that I come back to live with them if I wanted to. But they were free from taking care of their child for a while, and I wanted them to keep on enjoying their time together peacefully. The last thing I wanted was to interfere with that. Besides, I do want to remarry. Of course, I thought I would never get married again right after the divorce, but I still felt lonely living alone. So I've been looking for a match on my own, and I've actually just exchanged contact information with a very sweet guy by the name of Butch. His real name is Brandon. But considering how grisly he is, everyone calls him Butch, and he's quite possibly the funniest guy I've ever met. I'm not saying that marriage is everything and happiness comes in different forms for everyone. I'm looking for a partner because I feel my own happiness will come with loving someone and being loved by that someone. I want to be with someone who accepts me for who I am. Gail, working as a secretary in a successful company. With this in mind, I walk out the front door and wave to Butch, waiting outside his car, which will take us to our date.